Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to be reading stories from the Reddit thread called What's the Most Insane True Crime Story You've Heard of? So if you guys enjoy the stories, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope you guys enjoy. Thanks. Mary Vincent. She was 15 and was hitchhiking to get back home. She was picked up by Lawrence Singleton, who tied her up, raped her, cut both of her arms off at the forearms, and threw her down a ditch off the side of the highway. Mary used mud to slow the bleeding, climbed up the ditch, and traveled 3 miles before she was picked up and given emergency care. She then went on to design her own prosthetic arms and became an artist. Truly inspiring. In Australia, the case of Daryl Suckling, a man who, through freak circumstances, nearly got away with kidnapping and raping 4 young women and murdering one of them. A farmer and his wife were invited to dinner with their neighbor Suckling, and a young woman who he introduced as his niece, Sophie Carney. During the dinner, Carney managed to excuse herself and informed the farmer that she had been kidnapped from Melbourne, drive out to the farm, and was being used as a sex slave by Suckling. The farmer physically restrained Suckling until the police were called. Sophie gave a statement to police but died of a drug overdose before Suckling's trial commenced. Without the main witness against him, Suckling was acquitted. When searching Suckling's farm, police came across items belonging to a known missing prostitute, Jody Larcombe. They also found photographs of an obviously distressed Jody being forced to pose in a sexual manner. This made Suckling the obvious suspect in kidnapping, raping, and murdering Jody. Because what had happened to Sophie was similar to what the police/prosecution alleged happened to Jody, they intended to use Sophie's case as similar fact evidence against Suckling at trial. However, with Suckling being acquitted of the Sophie kidnap and rape, the similar fact evidence couldn't be used. This, plus the lack of a body, meant that the trial was a non-starter, and the charges were dropped. Suckling walked free again. A third woman, known as Annette, also alleged that Suckling had kidnapped her and raped her in the same way as Sophie and Jody. However, the prosecution did not believe Annette was a strong witness, and the charges were dropped. Suckling walked free a third time. A fourth woman, Christine, claimed Suckling had also kidnapped her. However, she was double-jointed and able to escape his restraints and run away. Surely this time Suckling would get his comeuppance. Nope. Before Suckling could be brought to trial, Christine suffered a head injury in a vehicle accident that affected her memory and couldn't be relied upon as a witness. Suckling walked free a fourth time. Suckling was eventually arrested and jailed for social security fraud. While in jail, he allegedly boasted to his cellmate about murdering Jody Larcombe and burying him on his farm. On release, the cellmate contacted the police, who suggested he invite Suckling to live with him after jail. The police then bugged the cellmate's house and car, and eventually the cellmate coaxed Suckling into confessing on tape. This was enough to bring Suckling to trial and be convicted for Jody's kidnap, rape, and murder. 1 out of 4, and many years after the fact, but at least it was something. Charles Holden. He picked up a hitchhiker, was threatened with his screwdriver that was on the floor of his car, escaped, drove in the opposite direction of his house to make sure he wasn't being followed, returned home, only to find the same hitchhiker around his trailer and his mother Dorothy Donovan murdered with his screwdriver, all because the murderer randomly chose his house. One that got me fucked up was a story of a pregnant woman that joins an online Facebook group of other pregnant women. She then befriends a member and they get to chatting. Eventually the pregnant woman invites the woman over for tea. Police then find the expecting mother murdered in her home and realize her baby is missing. Someone cut open her stomach and stole her child. They trace the communications on Facebook to a mother that just recently gave birth to her child. It turns out it was all a lie. The lady lied to her friends and family about being pregnant, then befriends an actual pregnant lady just so she can murder her and steal her child. DNA tests proved the baby was not hers and is from the victim. Shook me to my core. The Ryan Waller story is wild. He was interrogated for allegedly killing his girlfriend while he had a bullet visibly lodged in his face. He kept telling the cops he was a victim and that he was shot, but they didn't believe him. Instead of getting him medical help, they kept questioning him, and the delay left him with permanent brain damage, prime example of police negligence. Ryan suffered from that neglect for a decade. He was left with frequent seizures, and in January 2016, he had a seizure that ultimately killed him. He died at 27, about 3-ish weeks before his birthday. The cops tortured and harassed him for over 6 hours. At one point, the cop in the room with him checked his obvious injuries, but deemed them fine and continued to abuse this poor boy. The Gone Girl kidnapping in Vallejo, California. There's a Netflix documentary called American Nightmare that I highly recommend. It's fucking insane. Spoilers in 3, 2, 1. A rapist named Matthew Muller kidnaps a young woman from her home. He drugs both her and her husband and gives the husband insane instructions as a supposed ransom. Keeps the young woman for days while raping her. Meanwhile, her husband is the chief suspect of the pleas, and to be fair, at first glance, his real account sounds very made up. Eventually, the woman is released, but it looks weird, and she is labeled a gone girl by the cops, because movies, of course, inform reality, and now the cops are looking to charge her and the husband for wasting the time of law enforcement. The actual rapist is eventually caught in another kidnapping, and a cop in that other town eventually connects the dots and ends the ordeal of the couple. Oliver Town. Around 50 years ago, a guy held up a bank in Kenora, Ontario. He handed the bank teller a note asking for all the money. A large amount of explosives were strapped around his chest, and a detonator was clenched between his teeth. He walked out the front door of the bank where a large group of people were gathered, tripped, and the explosives went off. They were never able to identify the man, so they gave him the nickname Oliver Town. All over town. Where we live, the Harvey murders. 2 men randomly picked a house, went in, tied up mom and dad and young daughter in the basement. But other young daughter was spending the night and was being dropped off. Mom had to go to the door to get the daughter and do so without giving away what was happening, under threat of harm to the others. It was for nothing. The men killed them all brutally and tried to set the basement on fire. It traumatized our city. Wonderful family, well known and loved. Taken away by a pair of criminal monsters. I'm probably biased because I live nearby, but the kidnapping of Jamie Kloss and the murder of her parents. In the middle of the night, a man knocks on their door, shoots the dad in the face with a shotgun. Jamie and her mother hide in the bathtub. Man comes in and shoots the mom dead, takes Jamie. As he's driving them to his cabin, they pass by the police on their way to the crime scene. Months go by, and this poor girl managed to escape by crawling out of the homemade barricade he kept her in. She ran and luckily was recognized by a woman walking her dog. The reason he did all this? He caught a glimpse of her getting on a school bus and decided he wanted to kidnap her. Just a random coincidence that he even saw her. Anthony Curcio put together a brilliant plan for a bank heist and still got caught. For weeks, he watched a Bank of America and noted their armored truck deliveries. He'd worked out how much should have been in the bags. He knew the employees, their schedules, everything. He devised an escape plan that involved using a raft and a pulley system to haul himself under a nearby bridge to where his getaway vehicle was waiting. He placed a Craigslist ad for landscapers, asking applicants to arrive in the Bank of America parking lot on the day of his heist wearing jeans, a blue shirt, a high-vis vest, a dusk mask, and a safety goggles. On the day, he stood with the laborers, dressed identically, until the Brinks truck arrived, then maced the guard and took 2 bags containing $400,000. He escaped in part because when the police arrived, they found a parking lot full of men matching his description. A few weeks later, the cops were questioning people in the neighborhood and found a homeless man who said that he'd seen Anthony retrieve a disguise from a trash can while he was casing the place. The homeless man thought it was suspicious and wrote down his license plate number. Anthony was sentenced to 6 years, got out. He's now a public speaker and an author focusing on crime prevention.